As of recording this video, the PlayStation servers are down, so we apologise for the lack of gameplay in our videos. But this video we're going to be going over what are the best heroes within inside Marvel Rivals. We're going to be ranking every single hero within this game. So slightly different to other channels you've watched, we're actually going to fly through these as quickly as you possibly can. First of all, you want to see what the end result is, because everyone does, to make sure we have a good variety of players in this game. So Black Panther, B tier. The reason for that is he can be used pretty well, to be honest, and he can do extremely good in high ranks and low ranks. I just think it's quite difficult to use him and wait for his cooldown rotation and all that good stuff. Groot, I think, is absolutely A tier. I don't think he's the best Vanguard in the game, but I think he's one of the easiest to use by far, especially to get into, and then to learn his kit. There is a bit of a skill gap after that, but highly recommend trying him out if you haven't already. Then we've got Doctor Strange, who's probably the best single-handed Vanguard in the entire game right now. He's not dropped from S tier at all. Then we've got Adam Warlock. I think Adam Warlock needs a slight buff to make him A tier. I think he needs a bit of a buff to his healing capabilities. He does have good overall abilities in general, so I don't really think he needs anything changed. Captain America, again, I think he's B tier. I think you can do really well with him. Again, he's a dive hero, so it's a bit difficult to use, but in general, he could be really good in the correct hands if you know exactly what you're doing with his abilities and mainly his primary attack. Then we've got Black Widow, who is the worst hero in this game. I have to say she's definitely by far the worst hero in this game. She needs a buff. People have been using her a lot more recently, but I still don't think it's going to change anybody's mind on how bad this hero actually is. Then we've got Hawkeye. After the update, I do think he's C tier now. I think they kind of nerfed him a little bit too much. And even then, at high ranks, he's a bit more difficult to use. Then we have Hela, who definitely, Hela at the moment, is between S tier and A tier. I still think, personally, she's S tier. People are not using her, and that's just because she's had a health reduction. But if you can stay alive and you've got good healers on your team, then she's absolutely S tier still, in my opinion. Iron Fist is another dive hero, but right now I do think he's at C tier. I don't think he's quite as bad as Black Widow, because I don't think anyone's that bad. But you can get the odd Iron Fist hero that plays amazing. But for the most part, no one really uses this character all that much. He needs a slight buff in my opinion, but I'm not really sure what they can buff without making him like broken and overpowered. So then we've got Iron Man, again A tier in my opinion. He could also be S tier. I do think his team up ability is really good, but I just think in general, even Iron Man by himself is absolutely solid to use. Then we have Jeff the Shark, and I do think again Jeff the Shark's in C tier, especially at the moment. I think his ultimate is the only thing that kind of lets him down, because a lot of people know how to counter it now. And his primary attack, not the kind of healing ability, but the actual attack, is not like super powerful or anything. So next up we have Loki, who is the best solo healer in Marvel Rivals. If you want a solo heal, I don't know why you'd want to do that when the meta is a triple support, but if you want to solo heal, Loki's the only hero that can do that in Marvel Rivals. Then we've got Luna Snow, and I think Luna Snow's A tier. Everyone's putting her in S tier at the moment, but I don't think she's quite that good, especially compared to some of the other healers in this game. She's just not up there in my opinion. Magic is absolutely S tier, and if anyone tells you otherwise, they've not really played the high ranked games where Magic absolutely destroys through any hero, especially these melee heroes. Magic is probably the best in the game. Then we've got Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger is one of the best healers in the game, one of the easiest to use healers in the game as well. So essentially, if you want to heal inside Marvel Rivals, then Cloak and Daggers probably should be your first pick 90% of the time. Then we've got Hulk. Hulk is the best dive hero in this entire game. That is basically the answer. So he is the best single dive hero in Marvel Rivals. Magneto as a Vanguard, my personal favorite Vanguard to use, and he's definitely S tier as well. So Magneto in general, very, very solid, and again, a very good solo tank if you want to do that too. Then we have Mantis, and I do think Mantis at the moment is again in the A tier. She's definitely a solid healer in this game, just as good as Luna Snow in my opinion. Her ultimate's also pretty decent too. Then we have Moon Knight, and I do think again Moon Knight's an A tier. Moon Knight's absolutely solid at range DPS if you know how to use him correctly. His unks make him very easy to use, all that good stuff, pretty straightforward. Namor in my opinion could be S tier because he's my main hero, but I do think he's A tier. I don't think he's quite as good as Hela still, because I've had a 1v1 with a Hela when I was playing a game and I was struggling, to be fair, because it's hit scan on Hela and it's not on Namor. So it's something you do want to keep in mind, but he is a great anti-dive hero, so if you need something that's anti-dive, then he's definitely a solid choice. Then we've got Penny Parker. Now, I'm not a massive fan of Penny Parker in general, but I actually think I've seen a lot more gameplay of her now, and a lot more people use her properly with her abilities and her traps and mines and all those kind of things, and you're probably dying to them way more than you should. Psylocke, absolutely A tier, has been really good for a while now, to be honest, so she hasn't really had any adjustments or changes. I do think she's pretty balanced anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. I'm actually going to put Rocket in A tier as well. He's probably one of the best heroes and the easiest heroes in this entire game to use and feel like you're doing well with. If you're struggling in a game and Rocket's free and available, use Rocket. If you're struggling as a DPS, use Rocket. If you're struggling as a healer, use Rocket. If you're struggling as a Vanguard, use Rocket, because he's such a good, valuable hero to any team. Next up, we've got Scarlet Witch, and I think Scarlet Witch is in C tier. I think she does need a slight buff to some of her abilities, but it depends on what she gets the buff to. It definitely shouldn't be damage, because she does output a decent amount of damage, to be fair. And her ultimate, if you combine it with someone else's ultimate, like a Doctor Strange portal or something like that, for example, can be absolutely solid. Spider-Man, very popular hero in Marvel in general, probably the most popular Marvel hero, but he is C tier. Now, in lower ranks or in quick play, he can be absolutely fun to play, don't get me wrong, which this game is a bit of fun as well, so we do need to keep that in mind. But if you are trying to climb the ranks, then Spider-Man's not really a hero that you should be using. He's very difficult to use, similar to Black Panther, so people will struggle to use this hero. Then we have Squirrel Girl, who I actually think could be an S tier. And the reason for that is, if you don't really know how to use Squirrel Girl well, then yeah, she's not great. Her abilities are not fantastic, but her primary attack absolutely shreds any teams that are huddled on objectives. Like, the amount of damage that she outputs is absolutely insane, and for that reason alone, I think she's absolutely S tier. And you don't need to be in range and visibility or line of sight of the enemy team. You can literally bounce in your acorns off walls. Then we've got Star-Lord, and I do think Star-Lord is kind of B to A tier. Quite difficult to use in terms of movement, and his ultimate is probably the best thing about him. So then we've got Storm. Now, Storm is absolutely S tier at the moment, slightly better than Iron Man for the flying heroes, but I'd say only very slightly. I don't think she's that much better than Iron Man, and you could easily play between the two if you like flying heroes, and I do think the Human Torch will probably be better than both of them when he does drop in this game. So Punisher, in my opinion, is absolutely A tier, solid character, a bit boring to use, don't get me wrong, but he's definitely a very, very good hero in this game at the moment. Next up, we have Thor. Now, Thor is probably one of the best tank busters in the game. He is a tank himself, but he just outputs so much damage, especially against other tanks. He can shred through them very easily. Then we have Venom. Now, Venom is B tier. Again, I do think you can do very well with Venom if you know what you're doing. But again, he does involve a lot of skill, and I do think he needs a slight buff just to make him slightly better. I know they did nerf him in the first place, but I think it's mainly to his primary attack. They need to buff something somewhere. Then we've got Winter Soldier, who Winter Soldier again is an A tier. I think he's absolutely solid. Again, as a tank buster, he's great. He does output tons of damage, and his grapple hook is just really, really good. Then we have Wolverine. Wolverine is absolutely S tier at the moment for taking out tanks. If you know how to use him correctly, that's the main thing. If you know how to use him correctly, then he's S tier. And if you don't know how to use him correctly, he's going to be like F tier. You're not going to really figure out what you're even trying to do with this hero. So you do need to know how to use him well. Please watch some guides, there's tons out there, and then try to use this hero, because he's absolutely insane when it comes to taking out tanks in this game. Then we have Invisible Woman, who is absolutely S tier. She's been S tier since she dropped in the game, and I've kind of called it from the beginning of my first tier list. But then we have Mr. Fantastic, who is definitely C tier in my opinion. You can do well with him. He's relatively easy to use, which is decent. And I do think he's kind of in the higher end of C tier, because you can use him pretty well. He does tank a lot of damage too, especially for a DPS. So there we have it. That is our tier list when it comes to Marvel Rivals at the moment. If you skip to this part of the video, then no problem at all. But please leave a like. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.